Minute. Alright, there's Jasmine's Gams on. Welcome to Open Thighs Friday on the Hard Starboard Radio Network. About 7 minutes late. I apologize for that. It just, strangest thing, probably about 90 seconds before airtime, my internet just stopped. Disconnected. Couldn't do anything about it. So I did the usual things. Started with my cable modem. I unplugged it for 30 seconds, plugged it back in, and it wouldn't fully reconnect. You know, it has the little blinking lights in the front, and when it reconnects, it goes through a certain sequence, and then by the color of each light and which one is blinking and so forth, you know when it's fully reconnected. Well, it wouldn't fully reconnect, so I had to unplug it and plug it in again, and then it kicked back in. But I was struggling with that for about 10 minutes, and it started, you know, a minute and a half before airtime. So there's nothing I could do about it, folks. Of course, those of you on the podcast, you'll never know the difference. But I'm just making full disclosure. That's what happened. You know, I'm not going to leave you just start the show like nothing happened. Well, wait a minute. What happened to the first 7 minutes of the live streaming podcast? Well, there's your answer, folks. There's your answer. It's always something here on the Hard Starboard Radio Network. I'm your host, by the way. I'm Jasmius, your ruler, your benevolent despot, your fountain rabbi of conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity, and common sense. Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern to 3 p.m. Pacific. Guest call-in number 646-478-5068. Email address jasmius@comcast.net. Chat room is open. And of course, all the podcasts that you'd ever need or ever want, always building on the stockpile. Here at blogtalkradio.com/HSR network. All coming up on 8.5 years worth. Over 6 1/3 years worth at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, where, assuming that Mr. Gibbs shows up, there will be a Saturday afternoon extravaganza, all 3 hours, per usual, except the third hour will be on American Daily Review as well, because Constitution Radio at Douglas V. Gibbs on KMET 1490 AM preempted one more time for University of Redlands football. So that's the last time, because apparently University of Redlands sucked ass this year. So this will be it, and then we'll be back every Saturday until we make the move to weekdays on KMET, whenever that happens to be. So just a programming note, all 3 hours tomorrow on Saturday afternoon extravaganza at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, starting 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, assuming Mr. Gibbs shows up, and if he doesn't, then it will be just a 2-hour best-of program. So tune in to find out which it's going to be. Tune in to find out if Doug actually shows up. As the last 3 times we've been preempted, he hasn't shown up. So we will see what that turns out to be, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to think that all the times he's not showing up, he's out there getting us closer to getting the level of fundraising we need to start paying me something for all my strenuous Herculean efforts on Mr. Gibbs's behalf, and to get the radio program a second hour. Hell, get the radio program 3 hours a day, weekdays in afternoon drive. That's what we need. And to finally start turning this into the career I've always dreamed about. But, you know, who knows? But tomorrow, all 3 hours, if Mr. Gibbs shows up, on blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, kicking off 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And of course, I still haven't gotten the uploads for last week done on either of our YouTube channels. YouTube.com/Hard Starboard Radio, YouTube.com/American Daily Review 2. Well, it's a combination of laziness. I don't know if I call it laziness necessarily. That's part of it. But I keep falling asleep in my recliner in the evening, so probably explains why I haven't gotten laid as much this week either. But yeah, it might explain it. And of course, now this is Open Thighs Friday, and just before showtime, as I was putting together the stack of awesomeness for today's show, just came across the wires. Multiple jihadist attacks in Paris at latest report. 60 are dead. Hostages have been taken in several different locations. This is off of Reuters. France was rocked by multiple near-simultaneous attacks on entertainment sites around Paris. In other words, soft targets. On Friday evening, and French media said at least 60 people have been killed, and the number keeps going up. I mean, the last number I had was 35, and now it's up to 60, so who knows where it's going to wind up. And hostages were being held in a concert hall in the capital. The apparently coordinated gun and bomb attacks came as the country, a founding member of the U.S. Well, actually, we don't lead anything, but the founding member of the coalition that Barack Obama pretends to have something to do with, waging airstrikes against Islamic State targets in Syria and Iraq, was on a high alert for terrorist attacks ahead of a global climate conference that opens later this month. Western security sources said they suspected an Islamist militant group was behind the carnage. At least 2 explosions were heard near the Stade de France National Stadium, where a Franco-German friendly soccer... Is there such a thing as a friendly soccer match? A France-Germany or Franco-German soccer match is being played, attended by President Francois Hollande. The match continued until the end, but panic broke out in the crowd as rumors of the attack spread, and spectators were held in the stadium and assembled spontaneously on the pitch. There were reports of possibly as many as 4 shootings in central Paris, one of which turned into a hostage-taking at a popular rock music venue, witnesses said. TF1 television said up to 35 people were dead near the soccer stadium, including 2 suspected suicide bombers. Hint, hint. In the attack in the neighborhood of Saint-Denis, north of central Paris. Police helicopters circled the stadium as Hollande was rushed back to the Interior Ministry to deal with the situation. The president's office said he had called an emergency cabinet meeting for tonight, 2300 Greenwich Mean Time. That would be... Let's see. That would be... Actually, it's going on right now. Now that I think about it, 2300 Greenwich Mean Time is 3 o'clock Pacific Time, so it's going on right as we speak to manage the crisis. Police confirmed there had been shootings and explosions at the stadium, but not the number of casualties. In central Paris, shooting erupted in mid-evening outside a Cambodian restaurant in the capital's 10th district and the Bataclan Music Hall, where bystanders were evacuated as elite police commandos took up position. That sounds like a Jem'Hadar name, doesn't it? Bataclan. Several witnesses told television stations that up to 60 hostages were being held inside the popular concert venue. There are lots of people here. I don't know what's happening. A sobbing witness who gave her name only as Anna told BMF TV outside the Bataclan Hall. It's horrible. There's a body over there. It's horrible. Elsewhere, police cordoned off a wide area around the Petite Cambodge restaurant, where witnesses said gunmen armed with Kalashnikov assault rifles had fired at diners through the plate glass windows, causing multiple casualties. I was on my way to my sister's when I heard shots being fired. Then I saw 3 people dead on the ground. I know they were dead because they were being wrapped up in plastic bags. Student Fabien Baron told Reuters. There were also reports of shootings in Rue de Charonne in the 11th district and at the Central Les Halles shopping center. Well, it's typed up in a hurry. There's all kinds of spelling errors. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the Paris attacks, which came within days of attacks aimed by Islamic State militants on a Shiite Muslim district of southern Beirut in Lebanon and a Russian tourist aircraft which crashed in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. Earlier on Friday, the United States and Britain said they had launched an attack on the Syrian town of Raqqa on a British Islamic State militant known as Jihadi John, but it was not certain whether he'd been killed. Well, I think the term that they used was that he evaporated. Got in a car, the Hellfire missile was right on target, exploded. Yeah, he'd be evaporated. Now this is on. Let's see. This is the post, All Upon Its post at hotair.com. Whether it's apocryphal or not remains to be seen, but there are reports swirling on Twitter that gunfire has now been heard near the Louvre and at a shopping mall. How many terrorists are still on the loose? And now, here we go, folks. Julia McFarland tweeted the following. Supporters of ISIS are celebrating tonight's horrific attacks in Paris using the hashtag France Ignites in Flames. French journalist, I'm not sure, Idée Planqueuse, I don't know how to, I'm not even sure where the first name ends and the last name begins. But a French journalist says a friend at Bataclan said there were 5 or 6 gunmen and they mentioned Syria during the attack. The BBC guesstimates that 6 separate gunmen are involved. If, as some reports have claimed, the explosions were all suicide attacks, the total cell is even bigger. As I recall, the cell that killed scores of people in Mumbai was composed of 10 men. French intelligence is going to face heavy scrutiny after this over how they managed to miss so many different suspects. Well, so you remember French intelligence. Just like the French police, they ride up on their little motorcycles with their little bells, no guns, like Benny Hill. Oh, no, look at this. Look at this. What do you know? According to Jim Scuto, they tweeted this. Breaking, President François Hollande takes extraordinary step of closing French borders in response to Paris attacks. Well, boy, when did he become such an Islamophobe? Yeah, about that European open borders policy. How's that turning out, Francois? And then here's another tweet from Ann Baevsky. According to CNN, hostages texting that they are being killed one by one, begging for police raid. Yeah, but the police aren't armed in Paris. Or at least they weren't as of the Charlie Hebdo attack almost a year ago. 6 gunmen total, or 6 gunmen just at the concert hall with the hostages? How big is this cell? Ben Jacobs tweets, CNN reporting 6 to 8 attackers at the Bataclan Theater. Reports are streaming now at, well, this would have been about 25 minutes ago, that they're shooting inside the hall, and the Associated Press is reporting that French police are assaulting a site. That makes sense in light of the news above about hostages being executed. They couldn't wait anymore. And New York Times has posted a map of Paris, and if you look at it, you see that the concert hall is very close to the site of the Charlie Hebdo massacre in January. It's only about 5 blocks away. Let me see if there's been any updates to this post. And of course, now it has to take... It's my blogcasting computer, so that takes longer than my laptop. I'm not really sure why it does, but... Well, I have an idea. I've had it for 6 years. I've had the laptop for what? Not even 3 months. That's probably why. it's just thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. Yeah, I don't suppose I could. Well, so I'll just look it up on my laptop and see what I can find. See if there have been any updates since then. It'll be miraculous if anyone makes it out alive. Reportedly, there have been no fewer than 5 explosions recently at the concert hall. Are those flashbang grenades going off, or are the gunmen wired and have begun detonating themselves as French police enter the building? And final tweet for now, according to BNO News, a very Mumbai-like attack now. Paris attacks took place across 7 locations, security sources say, according to Agence France, the French Associated Press. However you pronounce it in French, I don't know. So, this could very well be Islamic State retaliating for the evaporation of Jihadi John. And if it was, I mean, that's kind of, well, all opponent used the word terrifying. But I mean, you want to talk about reach, you want to talk about command and control. I mean, we get Jihadi John in the wee hours of last night, and not like maybe 18 hours later, the word goes out to this ISIS cell in Paris, and away they go. I mean, you know, they know their enemy. Islamic State knows their enemy, my friends. They know exactly who they're up against, and they know that this will work. And by the way, isn't it a relief? Isn't it just a profound relief that Barack Obama has ISIS contained? Yeah, sometimes there is breaking news on the Hard Starboard Radio Network. Not breaking right as it happened, but is able to share with you the latest. I've got the same the same tab open. All upon its post at hotair.com. He continues to add updates. So I'll check that periodically over the course of the program. Speaking of the Islamic State, quite a bit about ISIS today on Open Thighs Friday. The United States, well, this is kind of tangential to it. United States has been banned from the investigative team probing the ISIS bombing of that Russian airliner last weekend. Now, here's what I wrote 5 days ago, last weekend. I said, there really isn't much objective doubt about the instrument of the Russian airliner's fate. And yet, Vladimir Putin has his representative in the crash investigation trying to discredit this most likely explanation, the bombing, ISIS bombing this airliner. Well, what gives? Well, consider that, consider the first four quoted words above from my post last weekend. Egyptian and Russian officials. Egypt has been under jihadist siege ever since the Obama-installed Muslim Brotherhood was overthrown over a year ago. The military regime of Abdel Fattah Saeed Hussein Khalil el-Sisi is less than entirely stable. and a highly significant revenue stream for economically rebuilding Egypt is tourism. This is what made the ISIS bombing of the Metrojet Airbus A321 a twofer, striking a blow against their new enemy and perhaps further destabilizing President el-Sisi's government at the same time. Now, Vladimir Putin knows this, just as he knows that if it's possible to cover up that fact that this was a bombing, divert public attention away from the true explanation for the crash, that would help Egypt's economic interests, at least in the short term. And in that instance, to whom would President el-Sisi be most grateful and feel most indebted? The Americans, who told the truth and inflicted pain on their erstwhile Egyptian allies in the process, since flights to and over Egyptian destinations and over Egyptian airspace have all been canceled. I can't be doing much for Egypt's tourist industry. Or the Russians, who helped them when and how they really needed it. Cover up that it was an ISIS bomb. Maybe the hit to Egyptian tourism isn't as big, isn't as long lasting, and the Russians are helping them investigate the crash at the same time, so they'll find out the truth, presumably. Putin wants them to know it, but I don't see any reason why he would lie to the Egyptians. The point is, Putin wants the Egyptians indebted to him. I mean, and that is how. I mean, I'm telling you, you do not want to play three-dimensional chess with Vladimir Putin. It's downright insidious how Vlad draws one country after another into the Russian orbit, using not brute force, although he is using brute force in Ukraine, but the same propaganda techniques that American leftists do to win election after election. And now he's doing so with the largest Arab Muslim country in the world. And he's continuing to pull them in. Guess who's been excluded from the official crash investigation? And the first two guesses don't count. This quote's from Newsmax, a brief quote. Neither the United States National Transportation Safety Board nor the Federal Bureau of Investigation have been invited to join the Egyptian-led investigation into the crash of a Russian airliner in the Sinai Peninsula late last month, officials at the two U.S. agencies said on Thursday. Representatives for the FBI said that the Bureau had offered both Egyptian and Russian crash investigators forensic assistance and other investigative help, but as of Thursday, its offers had not been accepted. Coincidence? I think not. Tsar Vlad exploiting an opportunity to split off Egypt from U.S. influence and return it to the Russian Middle East orbit that already includes Iran, Syria, and Iraq? Definitely. And the pace at which he's accomplishing this is accelerating, folks. Barack Obama has definitely remade the Middle East, all right. We should be ousted from the region altogether by the time he leaves office, assuming, of course, that he ever does. And when ISIS blows up an American airliner over Egyptian territory, will they allow us to participate in that investigation? And if they don't, will Barack Obama insist anyway, or will he say, okie dokie? And if so, will Putin allow President el-Sisi to allow it? Just a thought. Well, 2016 is definitely a different cycle, presidential election cycle, than any we've seen in a very, very long time on the Republican side. Or even on the Democrat side. I mean, although it hasn't been as long for the Democrats, 2016 is looking a lot like 2004. You know, with Hillary Clinton playing the part of John Kerry, and weekend Bernie Sanders in the role of Howard Dean. But on the Republican side, you know how how it usually works. You know how the Republican presidential nominating process usually works. There is an entire gaggle, a huge thundering herd of conservative candidates, and the Tea Party splits to the four winds and can't unify behind one candidate. And then there's usually one establishment candidate that all the donors, the donor class, the Republican establishment, and so forth, unifies behind. And the conservatives all beat each other to death with tire irons while the establishment candidate cruises to the nomination. And the rest is history. I mean, this goes back, probably to 1980. 1980 was the last time that the establishment didn't get their candidate. You know, their candidate in 1980 was George H.W. Bush, and Ronald Reagan won. And then his was a two-term presidency, but they got right back on track in 1988 with George H.W. Bush. And then he lost his bid for re-election in 92, and then 1996, establishment got Bob Dole, and Bob Dole went on to lose. Then in 2000, I'm not really sure which was technically the establishment candidate, because you had John McCain, who God knows he's establishment, and George W. Bush. He's a Bush, so I don't know if there was. I can't recall if there was a grassroots conservative insurgent in 2000. I think it just kind of fell into W's lap by default. But like I say, any Bush cannot be said to not be an establishment candidate. And then his was a two-term presidency. And then in 2008, John McCain was the establishment candidate. Bam, he got his turn. And then 2012, Mitt Romney got his turn, and nobody's more establishment than Mitt Romney. And so the bottom line is the establishment usually wins. Conservatives can't unify behind a candidate, and they can't. They don't play the game. They don't do what you have to do to win. And so that's why the establishment always wins the GOP nomination. Well, not this time. It's not turning out that way. Jeb Bush was their candidate, and Jeb Bush is a disaster. His candidacy is such a joke, such a dumpster fire that you could almost feel sorry for him if his sense of entitlement and the temper tantrum that he's throwing against Marco Rubio weren't so obnoxious. And now the establishment, the Republican establishment, is panicking. Of course, they've been panicking for a long time, but they were sure that Donald Trump was going to immediately self-destruct. They didn't think Donald Trump would actually go anyplace. At most, he'd be the typical conservative grassroots flavor of the month, where they make a kind of a big splash, and then they're a big deal for a couple, 3-4 weeks, and then they just fade back into obscurity. Now, I'm not going to say that I wasn't thinking along those same lines, but there's one thing you gotta remember about Donald Trump. Well, let's just put it this way. Think about the flavors of the month that kept erupting like zits in this time 4 years ago. For a month, you had Michelle Bachmann, and she shot up to her in some poll. She was in a dead heat with Barack Obama in a hypothetical matchup, and then she kind of went, and then along came the pizza magnate, Herman Cain. And then he kind of shot up and then was kind of a big deal, had a boomlet for a few weeks, and then just went. And the difference is nobody, in terms of the general American population, nobody knew who Michelle Bachmann and Herman Cain were. Nobody had ever heard of them. Not nationally, anyway. I mean, we political junkies, we knew who Michelle Bachmann was. I didn't. I had never heard of Herman Cain, to be honest with you. And so, you can't compare them to Donald Trump. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. Donald Trump has universal national name recognition, and Donald Trump is a billionaire. And Donald Trump has access to billions of dollars in free media time, free media attention, anytime he wants, just by picking up the phone. That's all he needs to do. So Trump was not going to be the flavor of the month, but I will say that I was as surprised as the establishment was when Trump just zoomed to the top, zoomed into the lead, which was easy to do. It's crowded as the field has been. And stayed there for months until Ben Carson finally passed him up. And then, Ben Carson's an outsider as well. Well, this is what's got the establishment panicked. It's not working the way it usually does. I mean, because you got a bunch of conservative candidates, but you got a bunch of establishment people as well. You got John Kasich, you got Lindsey Graham, you got Chris Christie, you got, there's not a clear path for anybody. And Jeb Bush is just not good. He's not good. I mean, Jeb Bush couldn't campaign his way out of a paper bag. He couldn't campaign his way out of a phone booth. He's just pathetic. And so now the establishment is looking around and they're panicking and they're saying, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And they have, and this isn't even an original idea. Some of them want to draft Mitt Romney again, or rather want again to try to draft Mitt Romney. And then, this idea came up earlier in the year, and it never went anywhere. And Mitt Romney, there was some talk about, well, Romney hasn't said he won't run, and then he came out and he kind of flirted, well, maybe back in the spring, maybe I will, maybe I won't. He thought about it, and then he said, nah, I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it. We need fresh blood. I had my turn. I had my chance. Didn't work out. And so he decided not to run. Well, now, if you were going to draft, if you're the establishment and you're going to try to draft Mitt Romney, then how just totally lost are you that you're recycling that idea when he's already said, I'm not running? And yet some of them are got it in their head that, well, maybe if we do this, we can just convince him to run, and then... And, I'll ask the same question now that I asked then. Why? Well, as I say, the immediately proximate reason appears to be because it's been 5 months and the establishment candidate, Jeb Bush, is still in negative polling territory, while any acceptable alternatives are beyond the fringe, like Lindsey Graham, John Kasich, Chris Christie, etc. And the most viable, even quasi-non-Tea Party candidate, the aforementioned Big Show, doesn't exactly fit their country club milieu stylistically or gastronomically, which is a circuitous way of saying that it's dawning on them that Dr. Carson and Hair Boy just might win. Or at least Dr. Carson, anyway. Where did Oh, I couldn't possibly have left out the link again. Yeah, I left out the link again. I don't know how. My apologies for that. Readers of politicalpistachio.com. Anyway, this is a link to something. I don't remember. Fearing one of the two current front runners, well, no, there's only one front runner. It's Ben Carson. might actually hang on to win the GOP nomination. Some top Republicans are in panic mode, beginning to think of drafting or trying to draft again Mitt Romney as their presidential nominee, the Washington Post reports. Trump, the billionaire businessman, and Carson, the retired neurosurgeon, are drawing support. Talked about it yesterday. I don't want to turn into a scratch CD, but I'm with the establishment on this point. I mean, Carson and Trump are drawing their support for their outsider status and lack of political background, which is insane. The party elites fear that their ideas won't play as well with general election voters likely to face Democrat Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, who has been on the national political stage since the early 1990s as First Lady, U.S. Senator from New York, and Barack Obama's Commissar of State, which is why she's probably not even going to win the Democrat nomination. And that could hurt the party down ticket, even threatening to turn the Senate back over to the Democrats, many fear, although there's probably better than even chances of that happening anyway. Now, this is so convolutedly wrong, I am not even sure where to start. First of all, the establishment people are right about Trump being a general election disaster waiting to happen. But that's because that's his appointed mission. To pave the way for Mrs. Clinton's triumphant return to the White House in her own right, like John the Baptist did for Jesus Christ. Whether by running as a Ross Perot-like independent spoiler, by splitting the GOP vote, or by swindling his way to the Republican nomination, and then playing the left-wing nut caricature of a GOP nominee, portraying every caustic stereotype of conservatives imaginable so as to bury the party of Lincoln and Reagan once and for all. So yes, the ideas Trump would portray would not play well with the general election voters, but that would be the whole point. Ben Carson, on the other hand, is blowing out Hillary in hypothetical general election matchups by double-digit margins, largely on the strength of his biography and his personal integrity, which is in such gaping contrast to her execrable, comprehensive corruption. Would he make rookie mistakes that she could exploit? Sure. He's already making them now, like having the education department police politically correct speech on college campuses, making Puerto Rico the 51st state. There's one that just the other day, I can't quite remember. I mean, there was his mentioning that, well, the pyramids are the grain houses that Joseph had built to feed the people of Israel, which, well, not exactly biblical. Must be a Seventh-day Adventist thing. But on balance, Gentle Ben's ideas would play just fine with general election voters, ironically, because his skin color would serve as a Teflon shield thanks to his predecessor. Now, it's not ideas with which the GOP establishment is concerned, because they don't have any, really. It's the front-runners and Trump's absence of political experience. And Lord knows they're right about that. I'm not a happy camper, said Peter Wish, a member of Mitt Romney's 2012 National Finance Committee. Hopefully somebody will emerge who will be able to do the job, he said. I'm very worried that the Republican base voter is more motivated by anger, distrust of D.C. and politicians, and will throw away the opportunity to nominate a candidate with proven experience that can win. Well, Scott Walker is already out of the race, so I'm not sure who you would be turning to in that regard, and sure as hell isn't Jeb Bush. But you're just noticing this now, Mr. Wish? Sheesh, where have you been for the past 5 months? But of course, they thought that Trump mania would be, like I say, a flavor-of-the-month fad like the early stages of Republican nomination contests of recent vintage have tended to be. Except, As I said earlier, Herman Cain and Michelle Bachmann and whomever else from the 2012 cycle were not national celebrities and multi-billionaires with larger-than-life personas who could command billions in free media attention just by picking up a phone. And Trump's rise is the one and only reason for Carson's rise to counter him. In essence, the doc is the political immune system reaction the establishment is looking for. In fact, Pundit noted this as well today at hotair.com. He suggested the establishment start quietly donating to Ben Carson. Best you're going to get under these circumstances, guys. I mean, Bush ain't going anywhere. John Kasich isn't going to go anywhere. Chris Christie's not going to go anywhere. There's polls are overwhelming in New Jersey that Chris Christie should quit and go back to New Jersey and serve out his gubernatorial term. Lindsey Graham's not going anywhere. I mean, you know, Ben Carson is it, guys. I mean, the only other possibility, remote possibility, would be Marco Rubio. Rubio or Carson, take your pick. Like I say, Dr. Carson's the political immune system reaction to the establishment that the establishment is looking for, but within the boundaries of the we want somebody who doesn't know what he's doing dynamic that is intractably afflicting this election cycle. But this guy, at least, seems to get the dynamic. Quote, "This business has turned into show business," said former Ohio Senator George Voinovich, a John Kasich supporter, you know, the John Huntsman of 2016. The Republican candidate who hates Republicans, that particular niche, apparently it still exists. "We can't afford to have somebody sitting in the White House who doesn't have governing experience and the gravitas to move this country ahead." Well, you know what? I agree with you 100%, Senator. Which does little to explain why you're backing a candidate who, one, was never going anywhere without this outsider mass psychosis, and two, would move this country sideways at best. Sorry, I need to fix a typo. There we go. Which brings us back full circle to the central question. Why draft Mitt Romney? Well, first of all, he's not running. He said he's not running, and he's not gonna run. Draft, in other words, is a figure of speech, not a literal verb. Not a literally verb. That didn't come out right. And not a literal verb. Second, Mitt Romney is a two-time presidential loser, both at the nomination and at the big prize itself. I guess that does technically qualify as experience, but why on earth is that the experience you people are looking for? He knows how to lose. Third, the Democrats tried to draft Joe Biden, and he declined. Why? Because it was too late in the cycle to whip together a campaign, the apparatus, the organization, the resources. Plus, Biden didn't want to run, which is why he installed for 2 or 3 months until it was too late. And that was a month ago, boys and girls. So what would be Romney's path to actually winning if he jumped in now? Yeah, okay. Just getting ready for the top of the hour break. Programming and hosting at the same time, that's how versatile I am. So what would be Romney's path to actually winning if he jumped in now? Answer, a bitter convention fight/coup seeking to usurp the nomination from the candidate that had actually earned it. Yeah, that would unify the party and create unstoppable November momentum that would overwhelm Hillary Clinton or Weekend Bernie. Can you imagine that? Can you just picture that? Let's say Ted Cruz ends up the nominee, just for the sake of argument. Let's say Ted Cruz gathers enough delegates or comes almost to the going over the top number, which I think is like 1,156, 1,128, 1,100 and something. And Cruz is almost there, but then here comes the establishment, and here comes Mitt Romney leading a huge convention fight, bitterly divisive, angry, GOP civil war. I mean, remember, Black Lives Matter has promised to burn down Cleveland next summer. You'd have war outside what do they call it now? The Quick Loans Arena or Quicken Arena, or I don't know, whatever. It used to be the Gund Arena. That's what I remember it as. You have a war going outside and then going on outside, and you have a war going on inside. Can you picture that? I mean, that would be that. I mean, there are those, and I usually poo-poo this notion that, well, the establishment would rather see a Democrat win than a conservative win. Well, I usually say, come on, dude. Now, shut up. That's stupid. They wouldn't prefer to lose than let a conservative win. That doesn't even make any sense. But when you see things like this, where they're talking, they know, even if they could get Mitt Romney to run, even if they could convince him, this is the only path available? A bitter, angry, divisive convention fight that would, whoever lost, whichever side lost, would be just alienated, and it would just stay home. And if the establishment and their drafted Mitt Romney, if they did succeed, I mean, you would have a goodly chunk of the delegates just walk out, probably. I mean, that would be an unmitigated disaster. That would be doing Donald Trump's work for him. I mean, it would completely destroy any Republican presidential campaign. Whoever won the Democrat nomination, whether it was Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, whoever, would win in a walk. It wouldn't even be close. It would be a disaster. And yet, this is what they want to do. I mean, I can't. I know. I mean, ordinarily, I'd say, you know what? Shut up. The establishment would not prefer a Democrat win than a conservative win. That's just stupid. But when you see things like this, man, it's like, well, you may just have a point. We'll be back with hour number 2 after this. Hour number 2, final hour of the week, heading into the weekend, and what hopefully will be a normal 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza, except for the third hour being podcast only on American Daily Review tomorrow. Kicking off 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, if Mr. Gibbs decides to show up. Which I'd appreciate it, since on the mailings that he sends out, he describes American Daily Review as being his show, and that's a bit of a fib, ladies and gentlemen. It's my show. It can be his show if he's willing to reimburse me for the cost of keeping American Daily Review on the air. Until such time as that starts to happen, it's my show, my podcast, a production of the Hard Starboard Radio Network. Never forget that, Doug. Yeah, you owe me for that, too. More updates on the Paris jihadist attack. Surprising and unsurprising news from Fox News. The surprise, a terrorist was somehow taken alive at the concert hall, the Bataclan concert hall. Not so surprising, he supposedly told police he's with the Islamic State. Now, whether that's literally true, i.e. trained and equipped by ISIS, or spiritually true, remains to be seen. Anyone seen a map of Paris with all 7 attack sites plotted? Well, I'm trying to deduce. Hold on a second. Gotta get the right mouse. I'm trying to deduce from that the map I'm looking at. It was tweeted by Sky News. How many separate mini cells there might be? Seems like the attack at the stadium was one district mini cell, given how far it is from the other sites. Which makes sense, since those attackers were suicide bombers. Harder to tell among the other sites. It could be that one mini-cell has hit multiple locations. Which would make sense, because why would you want to use up all your cells at once? They're close enough together that maybe they could have made it by car or even on foot before being intercepted by cops, who, of course, are not armed. I don't know, maybe they've learned from the Charlie Hebdo massacre. I hope so. And then there's this tweet from Matt Vespa. According to Shep Smith on Fox News, a man in French custody told police he's Syrian. He came with 2 others recruited by ISIS, and that this is an ISIS mission. So, I mean, given the timing of it, I mean, this doesn't seem like something that would be particularly time sensitive. I mean, the means used are pretty rudimentary, so they could have launched this at any time they wanted. This may be a mission they had on the hopper, and then they just decided, once the U.S./British drone strike evaporated Jihadi John, they were recognizing the potential propaganda impact of striking back massively and disproportionately. Not even 24 hours later, they just set this into motion. Did our Syrian friend happen to arrive in France courtesy of the European Union's new open door policy for Middle Eastern migrants? Because if he did, rest assured that that policy is going to go bye-bye. And while we're at it, let's see. No, there's a piece that I want to share with you that Mr. Gibbs put up on politicalpistachio.com today. And it's not working like I need it to. Come on. Well, you know what? It's not. Damn it. It's on here. Oh, here. Okay, well, Doug he has a post up about this already. That's all right. I'll take a look at it. If it meets my editorial approval, I'll just let his post stand. And I haven't published mine yet. I want to find this. Where was this? Yeah, it was yesterday. I won't necessarily read the whole thing, but I'll share relevant parts of it. Infiltration is an effective strategy of war. Infiltration enables an invading force to bypass enemy frontline defenses so that the invader may destroy the opponent from within. Infiltration uses deception and uses the honorable traits of the target citizens against themselves. Infiltration destabilizes and confuses the target population, softening their defenses as the infiltrators strengthen their attack with supporting forces and heavier methods of attack. Infiltration is then followed by internal struggles among the people of the target nation, but before they are willing to identify the attacking enemy, the system has been overwhelmed and there is no retreat or defensive measure available any longer. The infiltrators then attack from all directions, flanking their target and ultimately forcing the enemy to succumb to the conquest. In Islam, infiltration has a name. It is Hijrah, jihad by immigration. The Muslim refugees entering Europe are the infiltrators, weakening and overwhelming the native systems. Once the Muslim population feels they are on the road to domination, the attacks against citizens become more brazen and apparent. But the Muslims don't worry about being noticed, for by the time they begin using terror attacks, or terror tactics, it means they believe it is too late in the process for their target to stop them and reverse the infiltration. He goes on to talk about Sweden, but I tell you what happened today in France, what happened today in Paris. You know, that seems, it looks pretty clear that they think that they've already won, and that this is a pretty, like I say, it's more likely that this is one large cell. And look what they've been able to do. Because Paris is one gigantic soft target. In fact, you could even say that, well, they could have done only 60? They could have done better than that. Anyway, you want to hear about Jihadi John getting evaporated in a drone strike? Now, understand that this is really not a victory. It's great news. But it's not a victory in the war on terror. Like I said at politicalpistachio.com this morning, first of all, yay! Huzzah! Second, I love that choice of passive verb. He evaporated. I love that. And third, I hope Mohammed Emwazi, a.k.a. Jihadi John, is enjoying his 72 Lorena Bobbits because they're all going to have daggers and he won't. But the way ABC News framed this story really killed the buzz. Here's the quote from abcnews.com. The ISIS terrorist dubbed Jihadi John, who oversaw the brutal executions of American and Western hostages, was hit by a U.S. airstrike Thursday night and is believed to have been killed, U.S. officials told ABC News. One official said the jihadist Mohammed Emwazi was thought to be hit as he left a building in Raqqa, Syria, and entered a vehicle. Sorry, my nose continues to itch. The official called it a flawless and clean hit with no collateral damage and that Emwazi basically evaporated. Couldn't happen to a nicer Islamic fundy. U.S. forces conducted an airstrike in Raqqa, Syria on November 12, 2015, targeting Mohammed Emwazi, also known as Jihadi John, Obama-Gan Press Secretary Peter Cook said. Emwazi, a British citizen, participated in the video showing the murders of U.S. journalists Stephen Sotloff and James Foley, U.S. aid worker Abdul Rahman Kasig, British aid workers David Haynes and Alan Hennig, Japanese journalist Kenji Goto, and a number of other hostages, Cook said. We are assessing the results of tonight's operation and will provide additional information as and where appropriate, end of quote. And I posted the news report on ABC News Nightline last night, whose host, by the way, is Juju Chang. Interesting, eh? Now after Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross delivered the story, Juju Chang, the Nightline anchor, turned to Mr. Ross, and the first question out of her mouth was, does this constitute a turning point in the fight against ISIS? No, it doesn't, Miss Chang. You want to know why? Because the war against Islamic fundamentalism isn't a symbolic game of whack-a-mole, nor is it a series of individual manhunts. Al-Qaeda was not defeated by our finally bagging Osama bin Laden. Emir Zawahiri succeeded him, and the war raged on. Still does to this day. When Emir Zarqawi was snuffed out in a similar drone strike in 2007, did that end the war against the precursor of ISIS in Iraq? No, it did not. Somebody else took his place, and the war raged on, and rages on to this day. You want to know what would constitute a turning point in the fight against the Islamic State, Miss? Oh, I spelled that wrong. Miss Chang, the U.S. reinvasion of Iraq. We can't invade Syria now because the Russians beat us to it. I gotta fix that typo. Change. Sorry, Juju. It's fixed now. This isn't about personalities. I mean, Syria. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The U.S. reinvasion of Iraq would be the turning point. Surge 2 would be the turning point, which is what crushed what is now ISIS the first time, if you will recall. This isn't about, you remember when Barack Obama was leading the charge saying, oh, that'll never work. Oh, that'll never work. And then it worked. And then he took credit for it once he was in the White House. Now, this is not about personalities. It's not about wanted posters, Miss Chang. This is what you don't want to admit, but you know, deep down is and always has been true. A clash of civilizations. That's what this is. That's what it's always been. That's what it's going to continue to be until one civilization or the other remains standing. Now, don't get me wrong, I am elated that Jihadi John is free-floating molecules this morning. A vapor in the morning Raqqa air. But he's just one jihadist. And he wasn't even a top commander in the organization. We will not defeat this massive weapons of mass destruction wielding death cult until each and every member of it reaches the state Jihadi John now inhabits. And I don't just mean the Islamic State. I mean the entire Iranian oligarchy. I mean all of ISIS. I mean all of Al-Qaeda. I mean all of, I guess that would include Bashar al-Assad, Taliban, until every last Islamic fundamentalist, every last jihadist is dead. And when significant progress, the thing is, we wouldn't have to kill all of them, because when significant progress is made toward that end, guess what? The Islamic State will cease to be seen as the strong horse in this equation, which is, in reality, their recruiting cachette, their recruiting magnet. If they're perceived as winning, if they're perceived as defeating the infidel, if they're perceived as expanding, that's what's going to recruit more jihadists to their cause, not our resisting them. Why is that in turn? Because Muslim fundamentalists will see that Allah's will has turned away from them, that's how they'll interpret it, and they'll go home and bide their time for their next opportunity. And our job at that point is to not supply them with one. There is no cheap shortcut to actual victory, Juju. Either that price must be paid, or we will all pay the ultimate price eventually. Yeah, you can't get out of it. I mean, that's the reality. Barack Obama does not get to create his own reality. You may think he does, but he doesn't. And now apparently Barack Obama sat for an interview that's going to air on Good Morning America, I don't know, sometime in the next few days. I don't know what his new goal is with regard to the Islamic State. A year ago, it was degrade and degrade and destroy? I don't think it was degrade and defeat. I think that's what it was. He must have been. That must have been. This day brought to you by the letter D. Something like that. I don't know. His new goal is to shrink ISIS operations, as opposed to shrinking ISIS itself, I'm presuming. This is from Newsmax. Oh, hold on. Well, not there yet. This is what constitutes Barack Obama conceding defeat, ladies and gentlemen. Which is to say, admitting that he never was and is not and never will be willing to do what it would take to attain victory. Barack Obama said he was focused on shrinking and constraining the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. Okay, hold on a sec, hold on. Constraining the Islamic State. There, that's better. As opposed to degrading and defeating them a year ago? I'm not sure what the difference is. Which, cutting through the layers of BS like a geologist looking for the KT boundary, is interpretable as the harbinger of yet another Obama Middle East retreat. But on the bright side, now he can boast that he's ended yet another war. Heck, the White House could confiscate the rights from Summit Entertainment and dub his Middle East foreign policy Ender's Game. Oh, come on, that's funny right there. You don't think that's funny? You get the hell out of here, because that's funny right there. Oh, seriously, that's pretty good. Ender's Game. I like that. Obama acknowledged that problems with the militant group would continue until the Middle East stabilizes, which will never happen because Ender's Game was and is designed to destabilize the Middle East to the jihadists' benefit. Now, how is the Middle East going to stabilize? By magic? Wave your magic putter? Well, how's that worked out for you, Barry? Not too well, it appears to me, and to everybody else. Our goal has been to militarily constrain ISIS. Jesus, can't even know how to talk. Our goal has to be militarily constraining ISIS's capabilities, cutting off their supply lines, cutting off their financing. Obama, using an acronym for the group, he always uses the wrong one, I correct it all the time, told ABC News in portions of an interview that aired, it aired this morning. Okay, well, at least that's out of the way. as opposed to eradicating ISIS once and for all, which presumably is still within U.S. military capabilities even now. We could if we wanted to, we just don't want to. Obama said the group was not getting stronger and had not gained ground in Iraq, though its militants still pose a threat. Sorry, Barry. See, this is why the Russians had to intervene in Syria to prevent Boy Assad's overthrow, I'm guessing. Boy, if our enemies keep getting weaker, quote-unquote, like this, the black flag will be flying over the White House, complete with severed Obama head on a spike on the front lawn fence in no time. What we have not yet been able to do is completely decapitate their command and control structures, he said in a part of the interview that aired on ABC's Good Morning America program. No. Sorry, Barry. Wrong again. You haven't been willing to do what it will take to decapitate their command and control structures. There is a difference. He added that the U.S. needed more effective... Jesus. He added that the U.S. needed more effective Sunni partners to help stage an offensive in Iraq. No, we don't. No, we don't. We need the tens of thousands of American troops that were there and had defeated ISIS's antecedent, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, reinserted into the Iraqi theater immediately. Because we're not going to get any Sunni partners that are more effective than the completely ineffective ones that, by the way, are deserting the one's grand coalition because they can plainly see that we're not committed to winning. Until we get the Syria political situation resolved, Obama said, and until Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is no longer a lightning rod for Sunnis in Syria, and that entire region is no longer a proxy war for Shia-Sunni conflict, we're going to continue to have problems. Well, and what this means, Mr. President, is that you're going to have to attack the Russians and Iranians in Syria in order to depose Bashar al-Assad, because they're clearly and unequivocally there to defend him and keep him in power in Damascus. And of course that would make the United States an ally of the Islamic State. You can't get rid of ISIS and Assad. I mean, and you had your chance to do so the last couple of years. That's what I said 2 years ago. What did I say? On this program, at politicalpistachio.com, I said, we don't have a dog in this fight, in the Syrian civil war. We don't have an ally. They're fighting each other, but they both hate our guts. So we either stay out or we go in and we take out everybody. We take out the Al-Qaeda, we take out al-Nusra, we take out the Islamic State, we take out Bashar al-Assad. Clean sweep. Or nothing at all. Had a two-year window in which to do it. But, well, we would have had a 2-year window, except for Obama punted Syria to Vladimir Putin 2 years ago. And now, there's no way we can get rid of Assad. There's no way we can get rid of Assad because the Russians are there to keep him in power. So there is no way, by the way, that Assad is going to accept a political settlement that gets rid of Assad. There's no way Putin is going to accept a political settlement that gets rid of Assad. Never going to happen. So the only way we're going to get rid of Bashar al-Assad is if the United States attacks the Russians and the Iranians in Syria in order to get rid of him. Anybody think Barack Obama is going to attack the Russians, set off World War III, or 4 or 5, whatever the number is by this time? I don't think so. So that ain't happening. That's not happening. So, and more to the point, this is what kind of convoluted mess Barack Obama has created. Ender's Game, as it were. There is no Shia-Sunni conflict that compares with Islam's conflict with the West in general and the United States in particular. Witness what happened in Paris today. Yeah, you think vaporizing Jihadi John, that's a turning point in the war? Yeah, well, you think that's going to win the war? We got Jihadi John, we win! Let's declare victory and go home. Well, there you go. I got 60 reasons and counting why that's not the case. Is that saying we shouldn't have vaporized Jihadi John? Absolutely not. You just got to remember what kind of enemy we're fighting. And that this is a clash of civilizations. This is a battle to the death. The only way to defeat them is to up the ante. To kill way more of them than they can kill of us. It's the only way this is going to work. This is the only way we can win. And even then, it'll always be present. But to keep it way below an existential level, this is what we have to do. He's not willing to do it. Barack Obama, that is. Put aside your faculty lounge lizard nonsense and understand this, Barry. The best you're going to be able to do is cooperate with the Russians and Iranians by redeploying massive U.S. forces in Iraq to Iraq in order to trap and crush ISIS between our forces and the... Oh, jeez. I remember that one. I remember that. That was an edit I made, and I didn't edit all of it, and so that is consequently where the typo came from. Russian. All right, that's better. The best you're going to be able to do is cooperate with the Russians and Iranians by redeploying massive U.S. forces to Iraq in order to trap and crush ISIS between us and the Russian forces in Syria and the Iranians coming from their territory. Force the Islamic State, since they are landlocked and they are surrounded, force them to fight a three-front war that they can do nothing but lose, no matter how many airliners they bomb and how many stadiums and theaters they shoot up in Paris. Of course, that will advance Russian and Iranian interests in the region, strengthening the latter's regional hegemony on top of your bequeathing them a nuclear arsenal, accelerating the Middle East nuclear arms race with Saudi Arabia, and place the Israelis in an even greater peril, hastening their preemptive strike on the mullahs and the eruption of an all-out Middle East nuclear holocaust that will draw the Russians into escalating it to a global scale. The thing is, all of that will happen if we quit and withdraw, too. Which is the genius of the Obama doctrine. Ender's Game. Any Republican successor to Barack Obama is going to have his hands more or less completely tied and be unable to undo the catastrophic damage President Shrinking and Constraining has done. ABC should rename that program Good Night, America, because that's what's waiting for us on our national doorstep. Okay. It finally happened, folks. Finally happened. At long last, the Great Donald Trump Meltdown. Been waiting a long time for this. Now it finally happened. Now this understand, this is not Trump being Trump, ladies and gentlemen. This is Trump proving himself completely unable to deal with the fact that he is losing. And losing to an opponent that is immune to the weaponry and tactics that vaulted him to his former front-runner position and kept him there for 4 months. Then Dr. Carson took him on frontally over his phony, caricatured immigration hawk stance yesterday, and the emotional wheels came off the Trump Express, mental lug nuts flying every which direction like shrapnel in Iowa last night. We go to the Washington Post for the story. At first, the audience was quick to laugh at Trump's sharp insults and applaud his calls to better care for veterans, replace the Unaffordable Care Act with single-payer socialized medicine, that's the part he left out, and construct a wall along the Mexican border. But as the speech dragged on, the applause came less often and grew softer. As Trump attacked Carson using deeply personal language, the audience grew quiet, a few shaking their heads. A man sitting in the back of the auditorium loudly gasped, like you didn't know what kind of an asshole Donald Trump really is. Guess you do now. Trump scoffed at those who have accused him of not understanding foreign policy, saying he knows more about the Islamic State than the generals do, which, if you ever needed greater proof that he doesn't know jack about the Islamic State, there you go. He took credit for predicting the threat of Osama bin Laden and being right on the anchor baby situation, a position he says these great geniuses from Harvard Law School now back. It's all about him, folks. Me, me, me. Me too. It's conceited, arrogant, strutting narcissist. Haven't we had enough of that the past 7 years? Why do we need another one? He uttered the word crap at least 3 times and promised to, and I quote, okay, this is what Donald Trump said, promised to bomb the shit out of the oil fields benefiting terrorists. He said that at this rally, he dropped an S-bomb. He signed a book for a guy in the audience and then threw it at him, saying, "Here you go, baby, I love you." This is what, until recently, a lot of Tea Partiers did this. This is who they wanted to be the Republican nominee. Trump called Republican rival Carly Fiorina, quote, Carly whatever the hell her name is. Accused Democrat candidate Hillary Rodham Clinton of playing the twat card. Okay, I threw that one in there, but I got such a kick out of it that he said the woman's card, but I just thought I would put in what he was really thinking, and said Senator Marco Rubio is weak like a baby. Although, interestingly, very interestingly, he didn't take any ball shots at Ted Cruz, feeding the theory that Cruz and Trump are in cahoots. I don't know. I floated that theory back in the summer. It's a possibility. I'm keeping that on the back burner. I'm keeping that just in case, ready to go. Haven't debunked it, haven't shot it down yet. Trump then devoted more than 10 minutes angrily attacking his chief rival, Ben Carson. Remember, it was couldn't have been more than 2-3 weeks ago at most that Donald Trump said, "Oh, I can't attack Ben Carson. He's been so nice to me." And that lasted like, what, 5 days, if you will recall? Boy, last night, he didn't hold back. Saying a retired doctor has a pathological disease with no cure, similar to being a child molester. And now his surrogates are saying, oh, he didn't call Dr. Carson a child molester. Yeah, you throw the words child molester out there, that's pretty much what you're doing. That's pretty much what you're doing. I mean, come on. He called Ben Carson a child molester. Let's just get it all the way out there. Let's stop playing semantics. Let's stop playing word games. Donald Trump called Ben Carson a child molester. Period. If I did the stuff he said he did, I wouldn't be here right now. It would have been over. It would have been over. It would have been totally over. Why does he keep repeating himself? It's like a nervous tick. And that's who's in second place. I don't get it. No, Donnie, you're in second place. And that's what you can't handle. Remember, every interview for 4 months, he would justify his candidacy by saying, well, I'm in the lead. I'm in front. I'm on top. I always win. Now he's losing. Now he's behind. He doesn't know how to handle it. And what he did last night is what is in the process of making his candidacy totally over. I mean, I posted the video, politicalpistachio.com. You can watch the self-inflicted carnage for yourself. I mean, Trump has, even in this campaign of his, made no secret of the fact that he's an entertainer, not a politician. In this gutter culture in which we fetidly marinate, that's much of what has shot him into the stratosphere of the GOP primary firmament. But, one, there was nothing entertaining about that unhinged rant. It came across not like a Don Rickles comedy routine, but as the puerile temper tantrum it was. And two, it wasn't aimed at the Republican establishment, if you will notice, but at fellow outsiders and or Tea Partiers who happened to be his rivals and overtaking him precisely because of his earlier success against that same establishment. I mean, Carly Fiorina is immensely respected, and Trump had already taken lumps for calling her ugly a couple of months ago. Ben Carson and Marco Rubio have the best favorables of and are liked more than anybody else in the GOP race. While Trump's favorables are even lower than those of Jeb Bush. And that was before he went verbally postal last night. Trump, that is. It's hugely ironic that Trump calls Gentle Ben pathological after that spittle-flecked, whiny, snarly display, coming mercurially after having been so subdued, for him, at the fourth debate earlier this week and in its aftermath. But what it was above all else was unpresidential. Think about this, remaining Trumpsters, and think about it hard. Is this the man that you want in charge of the nuclear launch codes? Negotiating with a master geopolitical chess player like Vladimir Putin, who I guarantee you could manipulate Donald Trump with such embarrassing ease that Putin would have Trump jerking himself off in the middle of Red Square and bellowing that he was showing that KGB-nick who had the real 12-inch ruler, and taking over the imperial presidency with an I always get my way mentality and a job that is designed constitutionally to prevent its holder from getting his way? How would he persuade Congress to go along with whatever agenda he actually threw out there? I mean, Donald Trump does not persuade. Donald Trump bullies. Donald Trump insults. Donald Trump bulldozes. He does not persuade. They ain't going to go anywhere with Congress. I guarantee you, if he had any kind of agenda, it would be dead on arrival, no matter who controlled the Congress. I mean, have we not learned what a horrible idea it is to entrust power to an arrogant, egotistical, strutting narcissist with delusions of godhood? And is not Donald J. Trump vetting himself for all to see but those who stubbornly and willfully remain blind to it? Now, Captain Ed at hotair.com unwittingly provided a wonderful segue. Trump misses the entire point of Carson's memoir. He admits to his admits to his violent temper as a way of explaining his redemption through faith in Jesus Christ. It intends to inspire young people by showing that they are not incurable, but can prevail over difficult circumstances and unhappy childhoods. I'll take it a step further and assert that Trump doesn't believe a word he's saying, as is his standard operating procedure in this entire endeavor. Why? Well, think about it. If Donald Trump truly believed that Ben Carson was a Jekyll and Hyde-esque psychopath liable to go berserk at any moment, would he call him a child molester to his public face? Would he even show up on the same debate stage with Ben Carson? Much less stand next to him? I'm going to hazard a guess and say no. The doc, for his part, issued another soft answer while also heaping more burning coals on the Donald's pompadour. This is from Newsmax. Republican presidential frontrunner Ben Carson recommended praying for rival Donald Trump after the real estate mogul and television personality, in a 95-minute rant in Iowa, likened him to a child molester, Carson's business manager said on Friday. When I spoke with Dr. Carson about this yesterday, how we should respond, he was so sad about it. He said, pray for him. He feels sorry for him because he really likes Mr. Trump for some strange reason. My browser's frozen up, so just in case, I got the backup ready to go. Armstrong Williams is Dr. Carson's business manager, by the way. Often acts as Carson's surrogate in the media. This is what he told CNN today. To see him just imploding before our very eyes is just sad to watch. Now, Stephen Deese, who was a Trump supporter but has migrated from Trump over to Ted Cruz's camp, concurs, and he has the final word. He wrote this on his Facebook page. This broke my heart. I, meaning Stephen Deese, I can't stand Donald Trump. I like Donald, but this is embarrassing. Maybe the most embarrassing 9 minutes I've ever seen from a GOP presidential candidate. And when your last two nominees were Romney and McCain, that's really saying something. Bum. Bazinga. There's no other way to describe this other than a complete meltdown. And if you watch the reaction of most of those sitting in the background, it's clear they're not comfortable with it either. This isn't Trump being Trump or telling it like it is. This is conduct unbecoming of the highest office in the land. I highly doubt you build a multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate talking to people like this. If his goal was to hurt Ben Carson, I suspect it will have the exact opposite impact. What's happening here is a candidacy built on saying outrageous things is now like the proverbial dog who catches the car. Trump has come to the fork in the road. Either become more outrageous or evolve from provocateur to leader. Become precisely, in other words, what you've been attacking. See the logic? The playing the outrageous provocateur. You know, at some point you have to become what you've been attacking. That's not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not a leader. He's an entertainer. He can't be a leader. He can't be that insider. And remember the logic of the outsider. You always want someone from outside. Well, as soon as your outsider gets inside, then he becomes an insider. He becomes the enemy. He becomes the cockroach. Right? It's not, I mean, it's an irrational, it's a completely irrational mindset. There's no logic to it. There's no reason to it. If you truly want to be president, you do the latter. You go from provocateur to leader. But if you don't do the former, if you don't, if you remain a provocateur and act out all the more to self-eliminate, think Ross Perot, 1992. Precisely, ladies and gentlemen. Has even here. Consider this. Has even that option been endangered by this pathological outburst? We shall see, Galvatron. We shall see. And final item today. And it shouldn't take all that long. Major left-wing donors are preparing to dump millions, maybe billions of dollars into the Black Lives Matter movement. Yep, that's right. In case you had any lingering doubts that there are any remaining degrees of separation between the Communist Party USA, which openly supports, practically runs the Black Lives Matter movement, and the Democrat Party, let this story put them to rest. From Newsmax. At the annual winter gathering of the Democracy Alliance, major liberal donor club in Washington, D.C. next week, Politico reports that some of the biggest donors on the left are planning to meet behind closed doors. That's interesting. Why not out in public? The leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, one group of communists meeting with another. According to Politico, the movement is in need of cash to build a self-sustaining infrastructure. However, some donors are wary of funding a movement that is known for aggressive tactics. In other words, they're wary of funding a movement. They don't care. They support the aggressive tactics. They're just squeamish about Black Lives Matter being openly connected to them. You know how the left works. You get those 6 degrees of separation or however many. Major donors are usually not as radical or confrontational as extremists most in touch with the pain of oppression, said a Democracy Alliance member, Stephen Phillips. So don't tell me this guy isn't a communist. He uses he speaks the language, ladies and gentlemen. There's no difference between Stephen Phillips and Black Lives Matter. It's just one of style, not of ideology. Phillips added the communist donor world should be adding zeros to their contributions that support this, his word, folks, transformative movement. Transformative? Fundamentally transformative, perhaps? Again, don't tell me that these people aren't all on the same page. You know, the rank and file are singing the racist insurrectionary international. How about the Grand Poobah? Movements that are challenging the status quo and that do so to some extent by using direct action or disruptive tactics are meant to make people uncomfortable. So I'm sure we have partners who would be made uncomfortable by it or think that that's not a good tactic, said Democracy Alliance President Gara LaMarche. But, and it's always a big but, we have a wide range of human beings and different temperaments and approaches in the Democracy Alliance, so it's quite possible that there are people who are a little concerned, as well as people who are curious or are supportive. This is a chance for them to meet some of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement and understand the movement better. I think they made themselves quite easy to understand, actually. What do we want? Dead cops! When do we want them? Now! Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of nuance in there, if you ask me. And then we'll take stock of that and see where it might lead. Oh, we know where it will lead, Miss LaMarche. So do you. You could even call it fundamentally transformative. And ultimately, it will have brought the Democrat Party full circle when you stop and think about it. From employing as its military arm a white-dominated domestic terrorist organization, the Ku Klux Klan, to employing as its military arm a black-dominated domestic terrorist organization. Only the latter isn't just dedicated to white genocide, but to the complete overthrow of the United States government and its replacement by a racist Islamo-communist dictatorship. Or, put another way, making de jure what Barack Hussein Obama has already accomplished de facto. See what happens, Tea Partiers, when you stupidly stay home on Election Day because the Republican candidate or candidates on the ballot are not pure enough for your satisfaction? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, the Saturday afternoon extravaganza begins with American Daily Review, all 3 hours at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. If Mr. Gibbs shows up, tune in to find out. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend, folks.